All right, welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So glad you could join us today because we're tackling a subject that I think, well, it haunts a lot of us.
hmm
It's a feeling that usually hits you, I don't know, maybe around 3 a.m.
hmm
Or actually more accurately, probably 7 a.m. when that alarm goes
At
off.
the moment you have to actually move.
Exactly. It's that feeling of rusting. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. That sensation that your body isn't quite the fluid, silent machine it used to be.
Yeah, the gears are grinding, the hinges are definitely squeaking, and you just feel heavy.
It's a pretty universal fear, I think. This idea that the machinery is breaking down and,
Hmm.
there's no spare parts department you can just call up.
Right.
And what makes today's deep dive so compelling, so fascinating, is that we're looking at a very specific case study. It's a source that details one woman's journey from feeling like a complete wreck, I mean, a literal rusty machine, to feeling, frankly, superhuman. And she didn't do it with surgery or some new pharmaceutical drug or, some secret anti-aging tech from Silicon Valley.
Yo, and that is the wildest part of this whole story. She did it by completely overturning her kitchen table. I mean, literally changing what was on it.
Yeah.
So today, we are going to unpack the story of a 50-year-old woman who claims to have reversed her arthritis, her obesity, and this just profound lethargy by making one single radical change.
And what was that change?
Swapping the rice bowl for the meat grill. And I want to warn you right up front, what we're about to discuss is going to challenge a lot of what you've been told about healthy eating.
It absolutely will, because the source material we have today,
Right.
it's a first-person account that is just incredibly vivid.
It really is.
It starts in what she calls a black and white existence, and I think that's a powerful description for living with chronic pain.
It is, isn't it? When you are in constant pain, it's like the color just drains out of the world.
Your focus just narrows down to survival, to just getting through the next hour, the next minute. You absolutely stop living in high definition.
That phrase, black and white existence, it really stuck with me too. It sets the scene perfectly for this whole rusty machine analogy she uses throughout her story.
She doesn't just say, I hurt.
No.
She gives us these visceral, physical details that I think we need to really sit with for a minute to understand the sheer magnitude of her transformation.
Okay, so let's start there. She talks about the simple act of waking up in the morning and just dreading that first step out of bed.
Plantar fasciitis. And if you've never had it, you might not understand just how truly debilitating it is.
Describe it for us.
It's this severe inflammation of the tissue on the bottom of your foot, the plantar fascia. So literally, the act of standing up, the most basic human function of getting out of bed, becomes a moment of shock and pain.
She describes it as a lightning bolt.
Yeah, a lightning bolt shooting up her leg the moment her heel touches the floor, every single morning.
And just think about what that does to your day before it has even properly started. I mean, you haven't even had coffee yet, and your body is already screaming at you.
It puts you in a state of defense from moment one.
And it wasn't just her feet, which would be bad enough. It was her hands. She talked about swollen, arthritic finger joints. And there's this one detail in the source that really, really hit me. It's something so small, but it's so significant. She says she couldn't open a water bottle cap.
That's a devastating detail.
Hmm.
It's not just pain, it's a loss of function.
Exactly.
It's one thing to have, say, a sore knee after a long run. That feels like a temporary injury. It's another thing entirely to look at a bottle of water, to be thirsty, and to physically not have the grip strength to open it because your own body is so inflamed.
That's when you start to feel helpless.
That's exactly when you feel like the rusty machine. It's a complete loss of agency over your own environment.
Agency is the perfect word for it. It's those little indignities that just pile up day after day. She also mentions being unable to do simple household chores like dishwashing.
Right.
Just imagine standing on the sink, looking at a stack of plates, and knowing that the simple act of holding a sponge and scrubbing them is going to cause you agony.
It makes you feel incredibly old, incredibly fast. It forces you to depend on others for the most basic things.
And on top of all that joint pain, she describes this absolutely crushing fatigue. Her words were she felt like she had been beaten up without cause.
And that is such a specific and very common description of systemic inflammation. It's not just, oh, I'm sleepy or I need a nap.
No.
It's this deep, bone-weary feeling that your body is fighting a war and you're just completely exhausted from it. It feels like you have the flu, but you don't. It's deep in the marrow.
And the source mentions other things too, right? Severe headaches, constant muscle pain.
Yeah, it really sounds like she was just under attack from the inside out. Her own body was the enemy.
And visually, she felt she was declining rapidly. Now, I know we shouldn't focus only on aesthetics, but it's part of the story. She mentions looking in the mirror and seeing significant hair loss.
Thinning at the crown, yeah.
And dull, puffy skin. And that word puffy comes up a lot in her account.
That puffiness is a key clinical sign. It's often inflammation and water retention that's being caused by some kind of metabolic dysfunction. It's not just, gaining a few pounds of fat. It's a distortion of the body's actual shape.
And this ties into the visceral fat she mentions, the belly popping out.
Yes.
And here's the key detail, the thing that I think would drive anyone crazy. She says a belly would pop out even after half a bowl of rice.
And that is the ultimate frustration, isn't it?
It is. You think to yourself, I'm hardly eating. I'm having half a bowl of plain rice. I'm being responsible. Why on earth do I look and feel like this?
It's a clear sign that her body was in a state of what we call severe metabolic inflexibility. It couldn't handle the fuel she was giving it. Even that tiny amount of carbohydrate was triggering this massive storage and inflammatory response.
So her body was just screaming, wrong fuel.
Exactly. Which brings us to another piece of the puzzle she mentions. The digestive distress.
Right, the bloating.
Constant bloating, gas, indigestion. Her gut was clearly unhappy. It sounds like she was just miserable. Just the act of existing in that body sounded like a full-time, painful job.
Every single system was misfiring.
It was. And that, of course, brings us to the psychological toll of all this.
The hopelessness.
The source narrates this feeling of, is this it? Is this the rest of my life? When you go to the doctors, and she did, she went to the doctors, and they offer no real solution other than accepting the destiny of menopause, you start to plan for the end. You stop planning for the future.
Let's talk about that medical feedback for a second, because this is a huge part of her story. She goes to the professionals. She presents this laundry list of symptoms, the pain, the fatigue, the swelling, the weight gain, and what is the official diagnosis?
Menopause.
Menopause.
It's just aging. It's a lack of hormones. That's what she was told.
It's almost like a form of medical gaslighting, isn't it? It feels like they're saying, you feel terrible. Well, yeah, get used to it. You're a woman of a certain age.
It's a very deterministic, and I would say a very unhelpful view of biology. It assumes that because A, menopause happened, then B, suffering must inevitably follow.
And it leaves the patient with zero options.
None. If the root problem is time, well, you can't fix time. You just have to suffer through it. It frames your suffering not as a condition to be treated, but as your destiny.
And she describes the hopelessness of that perfectly. She asked herself, is this how I die? Painful and old? I mean, she was literally mourning her own life while she was still living it.
It's heartbreaking.
But, and here is the hook, this is the twist in the story that we're here to talk about, she didn't accept it. Or, maybe more accurately, she stumbled upon a different answer.
She found what she calls the hidden culprit. She started to think that maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't the lack of hormones, but the presence of something else.
She realized that the fuel she had been putting into her machine for 50 years might actually be the problem itself.
She discovered that the root cause for her was food.
Specifically, the kind of fuel she had been using for decades.
This is the critical moment in our deep dive today. This is the moment she realized the conventional diagnosis might be completely masking the real issue.
So the mission of this deep dive is to unpack this radical experiment she undertook. We're going to look at how she went from a size 77 to a size 55, regaining what she calls 20-year-old energy levels by doing the exact opposite of what most health professionals would have told her.
And just for some context for our listeners around the world, in the Korean sizing system that's mentioned in the source, a 77 is roughly equivalent to a U.S. large or maybe even an extra large. A 55 is a small.
A huge change.
A massive drop. But honestly, the weight is almost secondary to the pain relief. That's the real miracle here.
Okay, so let's get into section 1, the descent. We'll call it life in the hell of pain, because the source material provides this whole laundry list of ailments that I think we need to analyze to really understand just how systemically sick she was.
Right.
We've touched on the joints, but I want to go deeper into the day-to-day reality of this. Let's talk about her immune system.
Well, she mentioned she was prone to catching colds constantly.
Right, she says she was always sick, just one thing after another.
That strongly suggests her immune system was compromised. And it makes perfect sense. When your body is fighting this constant low-grade chronic systemic inflammation, That fire in the joints and the muscles and the gut, it doesn't have the resources left over to fight off external viruses effectively.
So she was just depleted.
Utterly depleted. Her army was busy fighting a civil war.
Okay, and what about the skin issues? She described her skin as dull and puffy.
It's interesting because we often think of skin health as being, purely cosmetic.
But it's really a window into what's happening on the inside.
Exactly.
The skin is our largest organ. If it looks dull, if it looks inflamed or puffy, it usually means the liver and the gut are really struggling. That puffiness, she describes, is very likely water retention. Her body was holding onto water to try and dilute all the inflammatory signals.
A physical sign of the internal fire.
Precise. And the visceral fat. We need to distinguish this from just, being a bit chubby. This is different.
Very different and much more dangerous. Yes,
Yeah.
visceral fat is the fat that wraps around your internal organs, your liver, your pancreas, your intestines. It's not the fat you can pinch.
Okay.
And it's metabolically active tissue. It's like its own little endocrine organ that is constantly pumping out inflammatory signals called cytokines into your system.
So having that belly popping out wasn't just an aesthetic issue for her. It was like she was wearing a suit of armor made of inflammation.
A very good analogy. She was carrying the source of the inflammation around with her constantly.
And she says it popped out even after half a bowl of rice. That detail just haunts me. It's the sheer unfairness of it.
It's the classic sign of metabolic inflexibility. Her body had completely lost the ability to process glucose efficiently. So even a small amount was like poison to her system. It couldn't be used for energy, so it's being shunted directly into visceral fat storage.
Wow. So she's in this pit. I mean, she's truly in a hell of her own body. She's in pain. She's bloated. She's exhausted. She feels like she's falling apart.
Yeah.
And then comes the radical pivot.
The turning point.
She decides to identify an enemy. And the enemy she picks isn't aging, it isn't menopause, it's carbohydrates.
And this is a massive, massive shift in perspective. She stopped viewing her pain as wear and tear, which is what we're all taught to think arthritis is, right? Just your joints wearing out.
All right, like an old tire.
Exactly. And she started viewing it as a chemical reaction, a reaction to what she was putting in her mouth.
So she decides to, in her words, throw away the rice bowl.
Now, we have to contextualize this for a moment. In many cultures, but specifically in the context of this source material, which comes from Korea, rice isn't just a side dish. It's life.
It is the foundation of the entire cuisine. In Korea, the word for rice, which is bap, is often used as a synonym for the word meal.
Yes. You don't ask someone, did you eat? You ask, did you have rice? It's the cultural foundation of every meal. There's even a concept called bapsim, which literally translates to rice power.
Rice power.
The idea is that carbohydrates, specifically rice, are what give you strength and energy. So for her to reject rice is almost to reject the cultural definition of what a proper meal even is.
It's like an Italian giving up pasta or a French person giving up bread, but maybe even deeper than that. It's the absolute staple. So for her to decide to just remove rice from her life, I mean, she was going against her heritage, her family habits, everything she'd ever known.
She was. And she didn't just stop at rice. The source is very clear. She exiled everything. White rice, bread, rice cakes, which are incredibly dense sources of carbs.
Oh, yeah.
Noodles, and even fruit.
Okay, even fruit. That feels like the one that usually trips people up. Most people can agree that donuts are bad. But fruit. We are told from childhood that fruit is nature's candy, that it's essential for vitamins.
But in a body that's in a metabolic crisis, sugar is sugar. Whether it comes from a banana or a bowl of rice, it drives an insulin response. And she decided, based on her research, to cut all of the major insulin triggers completely. She identified that sugar, regardless of its source, was part of the problem for her body.
That is, wow, that is drastic. I mean, giving up bread and pasta is one thing, but giving up fruit and rice? That leaves a gaping hole on the plate. So what does she fill it with? What does this new carnivore-adjacent menu of hers actually look like?
It's very specific and it's very rich. She replaced all those carbs with high-quality proteins and fats. The source lists beef, pork, and duck.
I noticed she mentions duck specifically. That stood out to me as not something you hear every day.
It is an interesting choice. Duck fat is, it's culinary liquid gold. It's very rich in healthy monounsaturated fats, very similar in profile to olive oil. Actually, it's a very clean and stable animal fat.
And pork, I'm guessing something like pork belly, which is a staple in Korean cuisine?
Exactly. But usually, pork belly is eaten with a mountain of rice and noodles. She was now eating it instead of the rice.
So she's swapping the energy source.
Precisely. And eggs. She calls eggs a complete food.
Which they kind of are.
They really are. Eggs are a powerhouse of nutrition. You've got choline for your brain, healthy, saturated, and unsaturated fats, very high quality protein, all the fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, K. It's basically a multivitamin in a shell.
But, and this is a crucial distinction from a strict, pure carnivore diet, she included fresh, green, leafy vegetables.
Correct. So she wasn't doing what some people call the lion diet, which is just meat, salt, and water. She was including fiber and phytonutrients and minerals from the greens. But the caloric center of gravity of her plate shifted completely.
How so?
She wasn't using a small piece of meat as a side dish to a big bowl of rice. The meat became the main event. And she wasn't trimming the fat or choosing lean cuts. She was deliberately embracing the fat as her new source of fuel.
I can only imagine the social pushback. I mean, seriously, if I went to a family dinner and I pushed the rice and potatoes away and started loading up on pork belly and duck grease, my mother would probably faint.
The source material explicitly mentions this. Her friends and family were horrified.
I bet.
They told her all the things we've heard a million times. You'll clog your blood vessels. You'll die if you eat that much meat.
You'll die. That is a very strong warning from people who supposedly care about you.
It is, but you have to remember, it reflects the prevailing nutritional dogma of the last 50 years. We have all been taught that saturated animal fat clogs your arteries, like bacon grease clogs a kitchen sink drain.
Right.
But human biology is not a plumbing system. It's infinitely more complex than that.
And what was the other one she heard? You need carbs to prevent hair loss. I have definitely heard that one before, that if you go low carb, all your hair falls out.
Which is deeply ironic, because she was already losing her hair on the high-carb diet that everyone was telling her was healthy.
Exactly. That's the crazy part. She was doing everything right, eating the rice, limiting the red meat, and she was sick, she was fat, and her hair was thinning, so she decided to listen to her own intuition instead of the societal noise.
It really highlights the contrast between what society warns us about
Mm.
and what her own body's immediate feedback loop was telling her. She was essentially betting her life on the radical idea that almost everyone else was wrong.
It's a huge gamble.
A huge gamble. But she was already living in a hell of pain. What did she have to lose?
That's a fair point. Okay, so let's talk about the mechanism. Why did she think this would work? Or rather, why does the source claim it did work so spectacularly? What is the biological reason that eating more fat and protein would fix something like arthritis? It seems so counterintuitive to everything we've been taught about inflammation and red meat.
It absolutely does, until you look at the insulin connection. The source material breaks this down quite well, actually. The primary argument is that her pain, her swelling, her fatigue, all of it was being driven by chronically high levels of insulin and the inflammation that comes with it.
Okay, let's unpack this for a minute. Insulin and inflammation. How exactly are those two things connected? Because I think most people just think of insulin as the diabetes hormone.
Right. It's the hormone that manages blood sugar. And that's true. When you eat carbohydrates, especially refined ones like white rice or noodles or bread, your blood sugar spikes very quickly. Your pancreas then releases insulin to manage that sugar. Insulin is like the usher that moves the sugar from your bloodstream into your cells to be used for energy. But if you were doing this constantly, meal after meal, day after day, for decades,
Your cells get tired of listening?
they get tired of listening. That's a great way to put it. They become insulin resistant. So your pancreas has to shout louder. It has to pump out even more insulin to get the job done. And this leads to chronically high insulin levels, a condition called hyperinsulinemia.
And that's the problem.
That is the core of the problem. Because insulin isn't just a blood sugar manager. It's a powerful signaling hormone. And in high amounts, it is profoundly pro-inflammatory.
In what way? How does it cause inflammation?
Well, for one, it signals the body to store fat, particularly that dangerous visceral fat we talked about. But it also directly signals the kidneys to retain sodium and water.
Ah, so that's the puckiness.
That is very likely the puffiness and a big contributor to high blood pressure. But it also could generally exacerbate inflammation in all of your tissues. High insulin keeps the body in a constant state of storage and high alert and defense, rather than a state of rest, digest, and repair.
So with eating the rice and noodles, she was essentially keeping her body in a state of constant low-grade inflammation, 247.
That's the theory, yes. The source also uses this very potent term, sugar toxins.
Oh, okay, that sounds terrifying. Sugar toxins. Can you explain that in plain English? What does that mean?
It almost certainly refers to a biological process that creates compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGs for short.
AGs. Wow.
Yeah, a pretty fitting acronym, isn't it?
So what are they?
Think of it like caramelizing onions in a hot pan. You take a protein and a sugar, you add heat, and it turns brown and sticky and delicious. That chemical process is called glycation.
Okay, delicious when it's onions.
Not so delicious when it's happening inside your arteries or your joints. When you have excess glucose floating around in your bloodstream for long periods of time, it spontaneously binds to proteins and fats in your body. It glycates them.
So it makes them sticky.
It makes them stiff, sticky, and dysfunctional. It literally makes your tissues rusty and brittle. It particularly affects long-lived proteins like collagen, which is what your skin, your cartilage, and all your connective tissues are made of.
So when she said she felt like a rusty machine, she wasn't just using a poetic metaphor.
No, she was likely describing a literal biological reality. Her tissues were probably becoming stiffened and damaged by this glycation process. The sugar was literally gumming up the works.
Wow. So the rust was the glycation. And by removing the constant supply of glucose, she effectively stopped the rusting process.
Precisely. She turned off the supply of the primary rusting agent.
But she didn't just remove the rust, she also had to grease the gears again. And I guess that's where the fat and protein come in.
Right, and this is where she completely reframes the conventional view of animal fat. Instead of seeing it as a clogging agent, she describes it as a source of cellular regeneration. She makes the claim that the fats from the meat and eggs provided the raw materials and the energy needed to repair her damaged cells.
That is a fascinating shift in mindset. Fuel for repair, not fuel for storage.
And scientifically, this makes a lot of sense. Every single cell membrane in your body is a larded bilayer. It's made of fat and cholesterol. Your brain is over 60% fat. To repair a crumbling building, you need new bricks and mortar. For the human body, the bricks and mortar are high-quality proteins and fats. You can't build a new cell wall out of a bowl of rice.
So she shifted from a fuel that was actively causing damage, the sugar, to a fuel that provided the building blocks for healing.
Exactly. And because she wasn't constantly spiking her insulin anymore, her body could finally learn how to access all that stored body fat for energy instead of just locking it away in her cells. She switched her entire metabolic mode from being a sugar burner to a fat burner.
Now, all of this theory is great. It sounds very convincing, but the proof is in the pudding, or I guess in this case, the proof is in the steak.
Yes.
Let's talk about the transformation, because the timeline here is what I find so staggering. 3 months.
3 months. That's a blink of an eye in the world of chronic disease. Usually, we think of reversing these kinds of conditions as taking years of hard work, if it's even possible at all.
So let's look at the scoreboard here. Result number 1, the extinction of pain. And I love that word she uses. Extinction. Not reduction, extinction.
The hellish symptoms just disappeared. The source describes her being able to clench and unclench her fists in the morning with zero pain. Think about that water bottle again.
Right.
Suddenly the bottle opens. That daily frustration, that reminder of her own frailty, it just vanishes from her life.
And the stomping. I love that detail.
Yes. She talks about being able to just stomp her feet on the ground without that shocking lightning bolt pain of the plantar fasciitis. That is a massive quality of life improvement.
It's freedom.
It is. The constant headaches stopped. It wasn't just a reduction in her daily pain score. She describes it as the complete cessation of pain.
That must feel like an absolute miracle, to go from dreading every single step to just stomping around carefree. It's like she got her body back from a hospital takeover.
She did. She finally oiled the machine with the right kind of oil.
And then there's result number 2, the size revolution.
This is where the visual evidence becomes just undeniable. As we said, she dropped from a size 77 to a size 55. But what's so crucial here is where that weight came from. This wasn't muscle wasting. The source makes it clear she didn't look gaunt or sick. It was the visceral fat that melted away.
The dangerous belly fat, the stuff that was wrapping around her liver and pumping out inflammation.
Exactly, the fat that sits around your organs.
Yeah.
And she mentioned specifically that exercise alone hadn't touched this fat. She had been exercising, trying to be healthy in the conventional way, but the belly remained.
Stubborn fat.
Extremely stubborn. Only when she switched the fuel source did the belly finally vanish. She describes this amazing visual of being able to fit her entire fist into the waistband of her old trousers.
That's a classic after photo moment right there. But it wasn't just about the weight. Result number 3 is what she describes as reversing the clock. It's about beauty and vitality.
And this is where she directly contradicts that myth about you need carbs for beauty. Her skin, she says, went from dull and puffy to what she calls white jade with an inner glow.
White jade. That's a very specific, very poetic description.
It implies a kind of clarity and translucence, doesn't it? She said people started asking her if she was secretly visiting a dermatologist. It suggests that the systemic inflammation that was showing up in her skin had finally subsided.
And the hair.
The hair.
I feel like that warning, you'll lose your hair if you don't eat rice, is a very common superstition, especially in Asian cultures.
It is. But hair is made of protein. It's keratin. And it requires a huge amount of minerals and nutrients to grow properly. By dramatically increasing her intake of high-quality, nutrient-dense animal protein and eggs, she saw a return of volume and shine. She was finally giving her body the building blocks it needed.
So the thing everyone warned her would make her hair fall out actually made it grow back stronger.
The irony is pretty thick, yes.
And what about her immunity? The constant colds?
Gone. She says she stopped getting sick. And the gut healing. No more gas, no more bloating after meals. She went from being in an immunocompromised, fragile state to being a resilient one.
Okay, so we have pain gone, fat gone, skin glowing, hair growing. And just to wrap a bow on all these amazing results, she mentions the clinical validation. It wasn't just about how she felt or looked. The numbers in her blood work backed it all up.
Right, and this is key. Her blood pressure, her diabetes markers like blood sugar and HbA1c, and her cholesterol levels, all of them returned to the normal range.
Which is pretty ironic considering everyone warned her that eating all that meat and fat would ruin her cholesterol and give her a heart attack.
It turns out, for her body, sugar was the thing driving the bad cholesterol numbers, not dietary fat.
So we have a woman who has completely reinvented herself, physically and mentally. Let's look at her new life. This is section 5 of our outline. The idea that 50 is the new start.
The contrast here is just stark. It's night and day. We started our story with her in bed, literally dreading contact with the floor. Now she's playing tennis. And she uses the word smashing. She's not just tapping the ball, she's smashing it.
I love that. And hiking mountains easily.
It's a complete reversal of her physical capabilities.
And it's a psychological shift as much as a physical one. She went from feeling like a dying machine to, in her words, feeling lighter and more capable than she was in her 20s.
That is such a profound statement. Just pause and think about that. To be 50 years old and feel genuinely better than you did at 20, it completely flips the entire script on what aging is supposed to look like.
And that leads directly to her new philosophy of rebirth. She believes now that menopause isn't an end. It's not a disease. It's a signal.
Like a dashboard warning light coming on in your car.
Exactly. A big flashing warning light saying, change fuel.
That is such a key insight. Her body wasn't broken. It was just running on the wrong fuel type.
She believes her body was sick, not because it was old, but because it was being fed trash, or at least foods that had become like trash to her system. And the empowerment she feels comes from this core idea of food as medicine.
Eating is the best treatment.
It's an old concept, but she lived it in the most dramatic way possible.
It really empowers the listener, too. It says, you are not a helpless victim of your age or your genetics. You are the manager of your own biochemistry.
It's a message of agency.
Complete agency.
So for the listener who is sitting there right now thinking, okay, this sounds amazing, but it also sounds really hard. How do I actually do it? The source gives us a little how-to summary. What are the practical steps she recommends?
It's surprisingly simple, though, as we've discussed, not necessarily easy to execute socially. Step 1 is the mental commitment. You have to overturn the rice bowl.
Metaphorically and literally.
Both. You have to decide to break up with the carbs. You have to be willing to sit at a restaurant table and not eat the bread basket. That's the first and maybe the hardest step.
Okay, step 2.
Fill the table and your plate with fresh red meats and eggs.
Yeah.
Make them the star of the show. Don't be afraid of them. Embrace them.
And step 3.
Include fresh vegetables. This is important for balance, for fiber, for your gut microbiome, and for all those micronutrients. And she includes a very important nuance here that we touched on earlier, but we really need to stress.
And what's that?
She emphasizes not just eating lean meat, you have to pair it with healthy fats.
Why is that fat pairing so critically important?
If you cut your carbohydrates way down, you've cut out your primary energy source. If you try to replace it only with lean protein like just eating plain chicken breast and broccoli all day, you'll have the building blocks, but you'll have no fuel.
So you'd feel terrible.
You'd feel awful. You can actually get quite sick from that. There's a condition called rabbit starvation or protein poisoning. You need the fat for energy. Otherwise, your body will reject the diet and you'll just crave carbs constantly.
So eat the skin on the duck. Eat the yolk and the egg. Cook your steak in butter.
Exactly. Don't fear the fat. The fat is your friend in this new model. It's your fuel.
So the call to action from this source is crystal clear. Don't just blame your hormones or your age. Try changing the input to change the output.
It's a message of taking back control. It's an N-of-1 experiment that anyone can try. You don't need a prescription. You just need a grocery store and an open mind.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just synthesize the journey for a moment. We started with a woman who was, for all intents and purposes, waiting to die. She was in constant pain. She was hopeless. She was a self-described rusty machine.
And we ended with a woman who is vibrant, athletic, pain-free, and full of life. The contrast is just shocking. It's a story that goes from black and white to brilliant technicolor.
And so what, for the listener? Why should they care about this one woman's story, possibly from halfway across the world?
Because her biology is your biology. Her story raises a massive and maybe slightly uncomfortable question for all of us. How many of our own aches and pains, how much of our daily fatigue, how much of what we call normal aging is actually just dietary injury?
Dietary injury. That is the phrase that's going to stick with me from this. Are we literally injuring ourselves 3 times a day with our forks?
It's very possible. If the food you eat causes inflammation in your body, then breakfast, lunch, and dinner are basically 3 micro-injuries every single day.
Yeah.
Over 50 years, that's what, over 50,000 injuries?
Yeah.
Those injuries pile up, and eventually we just call it getting old. But maybe for a lot of it, it's just accumulated damage.
So I want to leave our listeners with this one final provocative thought. It's something to mull over while you're deciding on your next meal. If a 50-year-old body, a body that doctors had essentially written off as done, can regenerate itself so profoundly in just 3 months simply by changing its fuel, what does that say about the so-called inevitability of all the other aspects of age-related decline?
It suggests that what we call aging might, in large part, just be the cumulative effect of running on the wrong fuel for a very long time.
So the big question is, are we aging or are we just marinating in inflammation?
I think for many of us, it might just be the marinade.
On that note, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure unpacking this incredible story with you.
Thank you. It really is, at its heart, a message of hope.
Until next time, stay curious and maybe
Maybe
this house on the rise.
just maybe. Give it a try.
Take care, everyone.